This is the Industry Insider from the Association of Electronic Music.
The AFEM Industry Insider.
Hello and welcome to the Association for Electronic Music's podcast, Industry Insider. I'm Finlay Johnson. I'm the CEO of AFEM, and we're the not-for-profit trade body that represents the interests of electronic music, from culture to business. We wanted to do a special podcast recording today, looking at a really broad cross-section of our members. So often in work and industries, we're siloed, and the festival industry is massive, and it's impacting so many different aspects of our membership. And we wanted to kind of do something. I think we're in a unique position where we can bring together members that are complementary and at different stages of the festival ecosystem, because the trends of consumer behavior and fan behavior and ticket buying is going to really impact everyone's work in the coming year. And we wanted to take a review of this year through the lens of festivals and clubs in the electronic space and take a prediction as to what might look like next year. I'd like to also thank Distorted, who produced this podcast for us, and without them this wouldn't be possible. So our thanks go to Andy and the team. And I'd like to introduce you to our first guest. We have Freddie Sparrow, who's co-founder of Vento Event Insurance. Welcome, Freddie.
Thank you very much, Finlay. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So, Freddie, how did the summer in Festivalland pan out for your clients?
Well, I think there's obviously been a lot of high-profile stuff around the challenges that have been had. I think for our clients, and we had maybe over 100 festivals, I think we only lost one in the end to financial difficulties, which I think was. I feel like we got off relatively lightly in terms of our client base. I think, promoters are a pretty resilient bunch, and they kind of crack on as much as they can. I'd say there were some real. What I was most surprised about is that there were some real winners. Some people, because we're in quite a unique position where we see the numbers and have a bird's eye view and see people's budgets. And there were some real winners in terms of people who really stuck to their core values, kept things fresh, and understood social media really a lot to crack some new markets. But they were coming back to us and said, actually, we need to revise up our revenues from what we initially estimated. And then you had some who got hit really hard, like lost hundreds of thousands, and whether that be a headliner didn't quite work. They perhaps went too heavy in on the production in the first year. But I think the thing is a lot of those ones who were taking those big risks maybe had a business that had like an underlying, load of club shows or a production company or something that would allow them to take those risks. So, I think that was. I think that the other thing is on the camping side of things. I think there's never been a harder time to start a camping festival, sadly.
And is that, do you think, linked to the kind of economic and the environmental uncertainties as well? Because obviously camping tickets tend to be a higher price. You've also got the weather playing a part in it. Have those two factors changed the kinds of policies you're able to give out and trying to adapt to what promoters need?
I think there's obviously been a massive surge in inner city festivals, if you want to call it, for want of a better word. So you can spend less money and go and get your festival experience. And there seems to be one every weekend or pretty much in major cities now. From an insurance standpoint, those are much more resilient. Often they're hard standing, they're less exposed to the wind, which means the insurance costs are low. Which is actually in line with what you see. And production costs are across the way. It is just much more expensive to go and build a city, if you like, from scratch in the middle of the countryside than it is in a park.
So you think, is that a trend for next year then, the growth of inner city festivals and perhaps smaller outdoor events?
Yeah, I can't see that going anywhere backwards. The only time that will, is if the councils start having getting involved more. I think that is a trend that we are going to start seeing is possibly more local residents getting quite upset about the disruption that's caused, especially if it's interlinked with strikes that seem to be pretty happening so much at the moment. If you have I went to one of the larger London ones, and there was a strike that day, which meant that 10,000 people all had to try and make their way home by on foot or in a taxi, which is going to cause quite a lot of disruption. So, and I think that's where you need to look at your insurance to see if it can cover that sort of. The council's giving you a hard time and pulling your license as well, but certainly. Yeah, when I was doing my little festival, I certainly thought it opened up a bigger market and it had a cheaper ticket price. So, with the current environment, why wouldn't that trend continue?
And you think, is there any kind of examples of like really good best practice in terms of risk management from your clients where they've kind of foresaw issues and then protected themselves accordingly?
Well, I've probably got some better examples of where people haven't foresaw, I think a couple of changes. Marquee tent pegs seem to be a real problem. We've seen a lot of trips from those this summer, and I think interestingly, I think what people need to watch out for is when it's hot, particularly, people start stripping back the marquees on the sides and not necessarily doing the necessary sort of risk management bit around that, and then people hop out the side of tents and trip over stuff, and we're getting a much more litigious society here, like there is in the US. There seems to be a blame culture that seems to. I've seen that a lot more this summer, where people are chucking in claims, to really try and see if they can get some money out of promoters insurance, and what promoters need to be really careful about is if people do chuck in a claim, don't say sorry, don't admit anything it's your fault there and then, because by doing that, it can nullify your insurance, which is ultimately the key thing to do. It's so tempting to say, I'm so sorry what happened, have some free tickets or something for next year. Don't do that. Just get in touch with whoever your insurance people is and get them to take over, rather than you trying to play the nice guy, because ultimately you're not going to win in that sort of situation. The other one is, a festival got cancelled. The local authority pulled their license. They didn't have an insurance in place. I'm not sure whether they're actually planning to get it in place, but had they had that insurance, it would have saved them hundreds of thousands of pounds. So I think early engagement is as important as ever now in terms of the weather, the unpredictability of certain local authorities. I think that those are the two key things I'd say in terms of best practices.
Yeah, there's some wise words there. The British culture of being too polite at times, potentially clashing with the increase in lawsuits there.
Exactly.
That's fantastic.
And people, and promoters are nice, kind people, but unfortunately, there's these no win, no fee lawyers that are getting more and more relevant here, and you've just got to be so careful.
That's great. I think there's some great takeaways from that advice, Freddie, and some interesting trends around the city festivals and perhaps smaller kind of custom-built events in the middle of the city that we need to look out for next year. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure. Our next guest is someone who's at the coalface of promoting and booking. It's Jenny Cochrane, a booker for Exit Festival, Middle Beast, XP Futures, and the founder of Get Ahead. Welcome, Jenny.
Thanks, Finlay. Thanks for having me. It's great to be part of this amazing podcast. It's lots of interesting things to kind of tackle today.
Fantastic. And so how were the festivals for you this year in terms of what you were booking and producing? What was the kind of any standout moments for you this year?
For Get Ahead, which is my own baby, it's a non-profit mental health initiative. We ran a small festival in London at the beginning of the year, which was against all odds, really, really good, actually. We normally have the festivals in the summer, and we figured with all the challenges people are facing just now with the economic situation, their mental health, why not do something in the new year, a kind of new year, new you, sort of, give them lots of kind of, fresh take homes and, for the beginning of the year to kind of a little bit of support, and it was great. But we saw increasingly companies not wanting to allow their staff to attend events, which, if you think of the amount of money people spend to bring a speaker into their office, for £10-15, you can take your team to an entire day where you get access to, the world-class facilitators and speakers from the kind of wellbeing space. So that was challenging for us, but, we had shy of 500 people there, which was amazing, and everyone really, really benefited from it. But I think, seeing that even when it comes to something like mental health and wellbeing, which is so critical to everyone, particularly in our industry, it's more challenging than ever to get people to want to invest into it at all. Fast forward actually into the more kind of core music industry side of things. Exit was great this year. It's always challenging. Financially in the Balkans, the economy is very weak over there, so we cannot increase the ticket prices. So we're constantly up against it with regards to increased talent costs, the production, the whole supply chain. As we know, everything is going up, substantially year on year. It feels like month on month at the moment. So the battle for us is always, bringing those headliners, those incredible artists in a financial level which is doable for us with the festival. But we're in a lucky position. We are one of the kind of original heritage events, and artists want to play for us. So we had another amazing year. We can put maximum of sort of 50 to 55,000 people on the Fortress at any one time, and we were packed every single day. So it was a really, really good year for us, a really great year. Really now just kind of gearing up for next year, which is the 25th anniversary. But yeah, we were really happy with the outcome. I think ticket sales were as good as could have been expected. We sold out every day, which is all any of us can hope for. And the stages were full. The artists loved it. The feedback was incredible. And I think it's just about constantly trying to, deliver the lineups that people want within those kind of increasing costs, which is the biggest challenge, and giving people memorable experiences, in addition to the lineups. Consumers increasingly, they're expecting an experience when they go on site, not just a lineup. Of course, they go for certain artists, but what additional experiences can you give them on site? What additional kind of bells and whistles? Because you can't have an event now without those extras, those added bonuses. So it was great. And then obviously XP is actually coming up in a few weeks. So we're at the kind of finishing line for that. It's happening in Riyadh at the beginning of December. We have a really strong program, more big artists than ever on board. But again, it's challenging with that, because I think the automatic assumption is because it's Saudi Arabia that we have all the money in the world, which we just don't. We're running a relatively small business conference for music and creatives, and we have to work within very, very tight budget constraints for that as well. But the good news is that it's a very exciting territory where people are very curious at the moment and keen to go. So we've got that, in a few weeks. But yeah, it's all in all, considering it's been a really, really good year for the projects that I work on.
You mentioned there, for example, Exit, the ticket price won't go up, but the fans are still expecting that big experience, and the cost of touring, we know, is also going up. How have you found balancing the levels of artists on those stages? Are you still reliant, do you feel, on big headliners to shift the tickets? Or is there a move towards a more like a broader lineup of varying kind of levels of DJ?
I think look, ultimately there's an expectation with the main stages. We have on the Fortress more than 40 stages. About 14 of them are proper big programme stages. I work predominantly on the main stage. And yeah, absolutely there's an expectation for us to deliver A-list headline talent, at least 1 to 2 big names on that stage every single day across the 4 to 5 days. And then, lots of interesting support talent, that kind of will bring new consumers from all of the different territories. So, I think what's great for us is that we have all these, I think other than K-pop, which we don't massively represent, we cover every single music genre under the sun. So there really is something for everybody. So when somebody comes to Exit, they're coming for that full 4-day experience. They're going to listen to artists they never knew existed. They're going to hear every single music genre under the sun. And, they're going to be able to experience all these crazy little, cave stages and cave rages, stages all over the place that, that you've never seen anywhere else, because the Fortress is such a unique location. But yeah, booking those headline acts is really, really hard, because we simply cannot pay the same fees that a lot of the other big European festivals can pay. So a lot of the time, particularly with some of the bigger live acts or the bigger, electronic or EDM acts as example, we'll end up having them exit when they want to come, when they're ready to come, because we just don't have, £1 million for headline acts. So we're lucky in the sense that it's a very desirable festival for artists to play on. And I think, just talking about music trends and things, something that we kind of realised this year was that, Exit is rooted in rock and roll and, rock music and metal music. And I think certainly we were probably booking a little bit too much kind of like dance music in the main stage. And the feedback we were getting from, a lot of agents as well was, you don't book band music anymore. So, we brought one of the highlights for us this year. We finally had the Black Eyed Peas on the main stage, which was absolutely phenomenal. We've wanted them for years and years and years. And it was just, such a special moment. And they all stayed afterwards and hung out with us. And it was just fantastic. But, we had Tom Morello, which the guitarist from Rage Against the Machine, and his show was just absolutely mind-blowing. He had his son Roman with him, who they play guitar together. And really to see that kind of that essence of what X is all about again on the main stage was really, really great for us. And I think it kind of reassured the diehard fans that we haven't kind of moved too far away from our roots.
But there's still the dance stage that's going strong as ever on the castle, isn't there?
Yeah. I mean, it's the mecca of dance music. Every artist under the sun is screaming at us to perform there. It's built on this kind of like it's like a kind of almost like a ledge. Was it one of the artists? Was it Nina Kravitz described us? It's like you're going. No, I think it was Blondish. It's like you're playing to a waterfall. You've just got like a waterfall of people in front of you. Incredible production, really great, experience for artists, and yeah, I mean it's like nothing else. It goes until 8, possibly longer in the morning. For example, this year, Black Coffee closed the dance arena on the final night, and he finished with Gloria Gaynor, I Will Survive. And I've never seen, electricity in the audience like it. So we had some really, really special moments this year. It was great.
That's great. And looking to next year, with XP, for example, it's tackling industry issues. What are the sorts of topics that the XP will be tackling, and maybe kind of artist-wise or genre-wise, what do you think the trends will be next year for Exit?
So, I mean, Exit next year is the big one for us. It's our 25th anniversary, which is an incredible milestone. So we've got some very, very, very special stuff up our sleeves. We've confirmed some major artists who have never performed in the festival, artists that I never thought we would get to perform. So really, really excited to start announcing some of them. We're launching a new conference in Croatia in May, because Exit obviously is not just the only festival. There's a whole portfolio of events that the company does. We're launching an incredible new conference in Croatia in May. There's a museum opening in Novi Sad, an Exit museum. There's a documentary. So there's an enormous amount of stuff happening for us next year. But obviously Exit Festival is the mothership, and we're bringing back some of the kind of the bigger artists that have been with us since the beginning. It's a real kind of journey through time from those kind of legacy acts, those heritage names, and some real fresh, cool stuff which we've never done. So can't really say much more about it at this stage. We'll start announcing soon, but I think we're in lineup wise, we're probably in better shape than we've ever been with Exit in terms of confirmed big names. So it feels very, very exciting. And XP next year. I mean, we've still got this year under our belts, but we normally have a little break afterwards and then start back in April. And, the challenge for us year on year is, bringing more international delegates over to really kind of buck that trend. And everything is so new over there that, young people are so hungry for knowledge and understanding of how the music business works. So really for us, it's about making sure that we are giving a real true reflection of how the music industry works from, the grassroots right up to, performance and artist level. The conference is split into 2 parts: XP Day, which is all the educational pieces, and then XP Night, which is the live performances. And we'll continue to be challenged by the pushback we get for not being able to offer big, massive fees. We're one of the only conferences still that, covers flights and accommodation and everything for our speakers to come. So we make sure everyone has an incredible experience when we're there. Our kind of key KPI with XP is gender balance. It's very, very important for us that we have, strong female representation across the programme, day and night. And I think we do really, really well at that. And looking at our programme this year, We're actually proportionately higher on the female side of things than men, which we're very proud of. And something I guess that we do over there, which I think is quite unique to a conference, is we run a whole load of initiatives all year round, which kind of keep the brand and the community alive. So some of the initiatives we have a DJ competition where there's a kind of search for the next star in the region. And this year we've brought on board, festival heads from all over the world to kind of be in our judging panel. And the prize for the winner is to get to win a spot. So, actually one of our head booker from Exit is one of the judges, and the winner will win a spot on Exit Festival next year as part of the 25th anniversary. And like Moga Festival and, O Beach in Dubai. So we're really, it's about those kind of cultural collaborations, that kind of import-export of talent, and how we can work with, emerging territories and emerging talent to kind of collaborate with our local talent, because there is so much talent in Saudi, but so far they haven't really had the opportunity. So it's about bringing the correct people in from all of these other regions in the world and sharing that knowledge, sharing that talent to create the next superstars. Then we've got our female mentor program called Huna, which is going from strength to strength about, creating that kind of community and voice for women in the region, locally and regionally. And it's been incredible success so far. We have an artist manager bootcamp program where we put a pool of young wannabe artist managers through an intensive bootcamp. And this year we've brought on board 4 or 5 of the kind of leading talent managers from around the world to kind of help support that process and give our kind of cohort of mentees, the real kind of framework of what it takes to be a successful music manager. So there's loads of stuff going on. And, next year for us will just be about really kind of challenging again it's the stigma, isn't it? The stigma around somewhere like Saudi Arabia that a lot of people still have. We can't affect the laws, but what we can do is affect positive change over there and give people opportunities and help, shape positive change for not just the women, but everyone over there. Because, 5-6 years ago, they weren't dancing, they weren't out there partying in the streets. So we've got responsibility to bring our expertise to them and, help give them that platform.
That's great. Thank you, Jenny. That was fantastic. Appreciate you joining us today.
Thanks, guys.
And now we'll be speaking to Nikki McNeill, CEO of Global Publicity and AFEM board member. Nikki, you're responsible for festivals, finding their audience and connecting with the ticket buying public. How was this year for you?
Obviously things have changed a lot. Different themes seem to be coming into play. Gone are the days where you could send out a press release with your lineup and get mass coverage. These days you've got to look at more storytelling, looking behind and as Jenny said earlier, the experience that the festival goer can have at your event. What else is there apart from the music? What could they do? Who could they meet? And particularly as I work with international festivals, it's like the location is usually a big selling point. So where is it? What can you do when you're there? So those kind of things kind of come into play, but definitely the experience is becoming kind of a big part of a festival storytelling now.
And do you find it's a challenge because so many of your clients are kind of storied festivals that happen year on year? Do you need to reinvent that story year on year, or how do you keep it fresh in the minds of the kind of the audience you're trying to reach?
Yeah, it's very difficult, particularly when liaising with the media, because there's kind of 2 different elements. You're promoting to your audience and to the media. So you've got to keep staying relevant to the media. So usually it's with strong relationships that you build over the years. Maybe it's media partnerships. Press trips are still very important because, a journalist might think, oh, I'm not sure where that is in that country. But when they actually come to the festival and they experience it, then the kind of penny drops and they're like, wow, this is amazing. So getting them to experience things really helps. So it's kind of building relationships, maintaining relationships. But then the other thing is a lot of festivals I work with have been saying how it's now more expensive to work with media and it's more costly for media partnerships. So maintaining those deals and having the budget for those marketing and partnerships is becoming more difficult. You mentioned obviously liaising with your audience and marketing to them. A few festivals, actually, Anna, Jenny's lovely colleague at Exit was telling me that the digital algorithms aren't really helping with online marketing at the moment. So it's much more difficult to stand out and beat those algorithms to make your festival and your kind of assets stand out with the algorithms amongst others. So that's also an issue that kind of people are considering. So I think a lot more money is going into paid marketing there. So, I mean, obviously people still go for the lineup. So having those headliners is important. But I think having those messages about other things at your festival is now kind of helping resonate with audiences and kind of helping you reach those audiences, even if you can't afford the headliners to compete. Also, sustainability is quite a big thing now, which resonates with audiences. If your ethos as a festival is to be more sustainable and you can get that out as a message, that is sometimes something good to promote, to resonate with your audience, to reach different people, because these are the kind of things that matter to people now, you know, social issues, sustainability and environment issues. So you've kind of got to be, you know, reaching a broader range of people with a broader range of narratives.
And you mentioned the media landscape there. How has that changed in the last year, or do you think it might change in the coming year? Are you seeing kind of a shift? There's now kind of lots of journalists with quite influential Substacks. You've got social media influencers with big followings. Are you having to kind of broaden the types of people that you're contacting and building those relationships with?
Yeah, I mean, it's always changing. You know, I suppose people would say when TikTok was invented, then that's another channel you have to learn to use and appreciate. So it's always a challenge reaching different journalists, lots of freelance, you know, getting those stories out. And as I say, if you haven't got a marketing partnership now or a partnership in general, it's very difficult to get news items and other stories in. Some media won't even come on a press trip unless you've got a media partnership in place. So that becomes more difficult. And also there's the competition. You know, there are so many international festivals that want that UK market. Everyone's just obsessed with UK. So you're competing with everybody. You know, if you think of all the big guns like, you know, your Primaveras, your Mad Cools, your Roskildes, all of those are really gunning for the UK market. So if they've got big budgets to advertise in NME, for example, you know, they're paying it, it means they want you to pay it as well. So if you're a much smaller festival with a smaller budget, that becomes very difficult. That's when relationships kind of come into play. And if you've worked with a certain media for so many years, that's when you can maybe kind of nudge the budget a little bit to fit within your remit and what you can afford if they see the value in your event to their audience. So yeah, there's a lot of competition out there you got to deal with.
And how do you feel the public engagement will kind of shift next year when you're speaking to your festival clients? Are you giving them a specific message about how to prepare or set themselves up for the best amount of coverage they can get next year?
I mean, it's definitely a year-round promotion campaign now. You can't do it 6 months before. You've got to be communicating all year round. So that's one of the biggest challenges. Also, if any of you read Sean Ronaldo's The First Floor newsletter, he actually quoted a new phrase or coined a new phrase, festival creep, which I thought was quite interesting, which is kind of what we talk about every year anyway, which is where festivals keep announcing their lineups earlier and earlier. And he used Primavera as an example, that they've announced like a week earlier in October, their full lineup. So that's the new thing, festival creep. You heard it first, or on Sean Ronaldo's newsletter. But I thought that was quite good. So, you know, there's always the competition to release earlier and earlier. And then lots of festivals do Christmas ticket campaigns, group ticket campaigns around that. So announcing around that time can work. So I've definitely noticed more people doing that. So if one starts doing it, then the others will surely follow. So it then puts more pressure maybe on the other festivals who don't have that marketing budget or team to keep doing things earlier and earlier and also get those bookings in, you know, as Jenny was saying, if you don't have the big budgets. So that's kind of one thing. What other thing came up when I was talking to people? A lot of people are still nervous about using influencers. You know, some festivals do it very well, like Ziget, Coachella, you know, and others are kind of have smaller budgets. They're umming and ahhing, should we, shouldn't we? So that's kind of still an issue. There are those who excel and do it very well, and others who are still nervous, yet to dip in their toes. So hopefully they will be brave and try something to see what works, because if you don't try it, you don't know. And what was another thing? Another thing that came up that I thought was very interesting was I was talking to festivals and journalists about this. They were saying how it's much more difficult to get artist interviews or promotion from the artists at the festivals these days. So, you've got journalists from France, UK and Germany all saying that when they go to a festival, they want to interview artists for their piece and they're being declined. And then obviously you have from the festival side, they want the artists to do the interviews with their media partners because that's part of the deal. And often they're saying no. Although I did speak to the lovely Ilona from Untold Festival, and she said her trick is that you've got to show them the festival. So often if it's a no, she'll take them round the site, and once the tour manager or the team can see how organised you are and how amazing it is, they often change their mind. So there's a lot of persuasion going on and proof that your festival is great once they're there, because I think sometimes there might be a perception from the marketing or PR team, we don't know where this is it going to be good? But then when they're there, they can see that it's very professional, very organised, and they're going to get some great national, local media coverage. So I thought that was kind of an interesting point to throw in there, because I know festivals really need the artists to help promote their events as well.
That's great, Nikki. Some of those questions will be very relevant for the agent on the call that we'll come to in a little bit. So that's some fascinating insight, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Next, we're joined by Duncan King, Head of Festivals and Partnerships at Skiddle. Duncan, hello, welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me. Good to be on with you all. Cantastic.
So what ticketing trends you see this year, and what were the kind of standout success stories? We've had a very, very positive summer. It's been very mixed kind of across the board in the UK. I think it's been very public how many festivals we lost. I think it was around 60 across the UK. We do have one of the busiest festival markets in sort of globally as well. But we've seen some really, really strong, seen some really strong sales. It was really interesting listening to Nikki talking about festival creep. It's pretty much all of our successful festivals are on sale for the following year, either at the previous year's festival or running a sign up within a week. There is something really to be kind of applauded by, giving that opportunity to those people while they're in that moment and enjoying that festival experience, to be able to kind of get them to commit to the following year. We put together a festival ticketing report every year, and it's going to come out in January this year, but there's some really interesting stats that I can share with everybody today around this. So in April to October 2023, so last year, we did across our site 92,000 payment plan tickets. This year, April to October 2024, we did 170,000 payment plan tickets. It's an increase of 84%. Now, what we're finding is that actually being able to give customers that opportunity to be able to commit super early for a really reasonable price and to be able to spread that cost of that festival ticket across the whole year, just totally changes the game. The group tickets as well, it's that balance between group tickets and payment plans. You think if you're going to a festival, especially if you're in that kind of 18 to 24 demographic, chances are you're not going to go on your own, and you're probably not going to go with just one friend. You're going to go with your horde, you're going to go with your kind of micro community. So all of these options, and I think it was quite interesting. I was in a meeting the other day where, with quite a few different festivals, and actually payment plans for a couple of festivals had never even come up on their radar. And they couldn't understand why everybody in the room was talking about really strong early sales. And we kind of find now that is such an important part, is that initial phase. So also we have an internal sign-up system that we use called Remind Me. And now what happens with that in terms of reaching an audience, we can actually, or the promoter can actually drive those sign-ups really, really early. The cost of the ads are tiny because you're not actually you're not pushing them to a hard sign-up. You're not pushing them to actually spend any money. And then what festivals are actually getting off the back of that? They're getting great first-party data. So actually, you have a really, really strong sign-up. You can actually remove all of those customers from your paid media campaigns because you can talk to them directly.
And like as Nikki said, you know, the noise out there between festivals, everybody is vying for the same people, right? So how do you stand out? You know, how do you make sure you're actually hitting your right people? And, you know, we really encourage people to kind of build up their own databases, you know, being able to communicate and kind of push that, you know, push that marketing directly to people, as opposed to, you know, shouting to, you know, trying to shout in a really busy room. It's really difficult. But yeah, they're the big things for us. I mean, we just, in terms of some other stats, this is a really interesting stat as well. Budget festivals accounted for 29.3% of all our festival sales on Skiddle. So that also shows to us, you know, that people still want to go out, they still want to experience, have that festival experience. They just can't afford the more expensive tickets.
Do you feel that the kind of demand for the festival experience is coming at a cost to the year-round club market? And is that why you're seeing that kind of people shifting to multi-stage or an all-day events where there's a slightly higher ticket price?
It comes down to the experience. I think that's the fundamental thing, you know, especially with that younger demographic. You know, they expect an experience. And I think, you know, where we've had like a whole generation come out of the pandemic where they kind of missed that rite of passage, go into their local pub, go into their local club. The first things they went to were these incredible outdoor experiences. So, you know, that has worked. I mean, we're seeing really strong sales in clubs. It's just different. You know, we talk about everything that's going on right now. I mean, I think all of us are old enough to remember the implosion of the super club era in the late 90s. You know, it is very, you know, cyclic. And, you know, we see the shifting trends all the time. But people, I think as well in the UK, you know, they want to feel like they're a part of it. You know, there are multiple festivals that you can go to where, you know, you could be at any other festival and you wouldn't really notice whether you're at one or the other. And I think the best promoters that we work with, they have a real identity. Things like Exit, what Jenny was talking about, you know what Exit is, you know its beliefs. You can attach yourself as a consumer to their beliefs. You can align with that. And I think this is where we're seeing the best success stories, where they really know their audience, they really know what they want to do, and the customers buy into that because they know that it's authentic and it's not just a sales tactic.
I think you're dead right with that. And I noticed that the NTA kind of have that great campaign at the moment, flagging that the last night out will be 2029 in the UK if clubs continue to close at the current rate. At the same time, that club Amber has opened up in Manchester, which they've obviously seen there's a gap in the market and a really competitive marketplace, and gone, we've got an unmet need and we think we can fill it. So that gives me a lot of hope, I think, for the sector.
Absolutely. You know, it's I have to think how I answer this. You know, it is very important that we talk about the negatives that are happening, because they're happening, right? You know, we can't, everybody needs to know. But there is a lot of positives happening at the moment. There's 3 new clubs opening in Birmingham. I think there's 4 new clubs slated to open in London in the next 6 months. There is stuff happening, you know, and there is new. And I think we have to be very, very aware of the pressures. And, you know, kind of, we've had the budget here in the UK yesterday, which has not quite gone to plan for the nighttime, to put it bluntly, it's for the nighttime industries. But, you know, it's new, and there are people coming through. I mean, in terms of, you know, when we relate that to promoters, you know, there is a bit of a slowdown in terms of new promoters coming to the scene, especially with festivals. I think we've just signed a brand new festival last week. And, you know, you don't get many brand new ones. You know, the access to talent's harder, the access to suppliers is harder. And, you know, it costs a lot of money, even running a small festival now. You know, it's an obscene amount of money that it costs to run it. So I think there is definitely that barrier at the moment for new people coming in, which is why you're probably seeing more events happening now through Live Nation and various other kind of bigger promoters. But then again, you're seeing a lot of these bigger promoters now, instead of running festivals, they're putting on concert series where it will be, instead of 1 4-day weekend that's a camping festival, there will be 4 individual concerts at the same site, but it's a completely different crowd each day. So yes, there's lots of negatives, but yes, there's lots of positives, and it's just new.
I think that rebirth is really important because it keeps the genre fresh, it keeps the culture fresh, and we want new promoters. And I think that's one of the areas where we could do more as an industry, is to support new promoters taking risks to enter for the first time and build something fresh and something new.
Absolutely. It's the Phoenix from the Flame story, right? It happened since the dawn of time. Things burn to the ground and then new comes from it. And, all we have to do is make sure that we're providing that infrastructure and that support to give people the opportunities to do something new. We've gone through, some of our really well performing festivals this year, kind of things like Terminal V up in Scotland, which is just an absolute machine. They know what they are, they know what they do, and they do it really, really well. And then, going things like the On the Beach series down in Brighton, that was an absolute success this summer. But again, lots of, instead of one big festival, it was two weekends of 3 shows. So it's just having to kind of, from our point, it's like looking at what you're doing, what your audience is, and how what do they actually want? Do they want to camp all weekend, or is this better to do a Saturday that's very genre specific to one genre and, do the following day as something completely different? We've also noticed, the other thing that we've noticed a real rise in is destination festivals, but UK promoters running international weekenders. So things like B&B All Stars in Portugal. We've got numerous success stories that we've seen where I think that is, they're almost like the modern Club 18 to 30 holidays, but with your exact tribe. You're going, if you're going to go Chasing Status in Tenerife, if you're a big drum and bass fan, you're going to want to go to that because everybody that's going to be there are going to be big drum and bass fans. So and then they get that kind of mix of holiday and festival for a cost that's quite similar to going to a big UK weekend festival. There's also the big Taylor Swift effect that we saw this year. I think there was definitely a knock-on from the big stadium-based shows where the ticket prices are and the sort of generic costs around attending those shows are so high. I think there's definitely been a decision made with various customers, right across the board, where it's like, we can pick one. We can't do 2. And I think this is also part of the reason why we've seen these budget festivals become so popular, because actually you can go for, we've got festivals, it's weekend for 90 quid. I saw a ticket for a club show this morning, and that was £99 for a VIP experience, granted, but that's for one show. Whereas with one of our budget festivals, you get a whole weekend for 90 quid. So there is that balance, but then the big stuff like Glastonbury, obviously I think they could just continue to put their prices up for the next 10 years and people would still buy those tickets. But again, it's Glastonbury, it's something with lots of history that people want to be a part of.
And hopefully one of today's young promoters gets to that stage where they get to become a Glastonbury and set their ticket price accordingly.
Well, one of our best performing promoters, when we first started working with them, they did one club show with us, and this summer they did over 80,000 tickets for a festival. So we see it happen. But again, we worked with that promoter for 5-6 years, and we've kind of grown with them and helped them, helped with these opportunities that they've had. but it's just much, much harder to come to market now.
That's great. Well, the green shoots at least, and green shoots of hope. That's absolutely encouraging to hear. Thank you very much, Duncan. Appreciate it.
Not a problem.
Next, we get to speak to one of the men responsible for putting the artists on the stage of these festivals we've spoken about. We're speaking to Ryan Saltzman, Vice President at Bullitt Agency. Ryan, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
No problem. You're very welcome. How was this past summer for your clients? What were the kind of unexpected wins or things that took you by surprise, perhaps?
I mean, the one word I'd use to describe the summer festival experience is plentiful. There's more festivals around the world than ever. It's not just limited to the European market. Typically in the summer season, most artists are seen kind of focused on the European festival circuit, but you're seeing a rise in festivals in South America and North America, even, slowly and surely into Asia and Australia as well. So, the biggest issue that we have as an agency now is just kind of road mapping everything to minimize the stress of travel on the artists themselves.
That's a really good point, because I'm aware that we've had some kind of UK-centric chat here, but obviously there's a very broad world of festivals out there. What are some of the kind of either specific festivals or just countries that you're encouraging your artists to go and tour to help build an audience and get that return on investment when they go back in future years?
It depends on the artist. Typically, like what I suggest for up and coming artists is that, when the majority of people are focusing on Europe market for the festivals, you focus on the other markets. So going to the North American market or South American market, while it might not be as busy or like peak time, you actually have less competition in the market, both from the other artists who are vying for those slots on the event, but also less shows are happening. So you have a higher chance of attracting a fan base to actually come see your shows.
And are you seeing the growth of branded events coming into other markets, not just UK brands, but international brands going into South America, North America?
Oh yeah, it's the next form of colonization. Yeah, every brand wants to plant their flag into another part of the world, and it's great because you have in some cases a lot of local promoters and festival goers aren't as experienced as, let's say, the digital promoter is or Tomorrowland is in putting together a festival of that high caliber. So you get that experience for punters, for clubbers who can't necessarily fly out to Belgium to experience it there. On the downside, though, it does kind of push out the local promoters, at least the ones that aren't working directly with that brand, to do the event, and puts them at a disadvantage to track their clientele or maybe pull in the same number of ticket buyers, because a lot of times now, especially due to budget constraints, people can't afford to go to multiple festivals in a year. They have to pick and use opportunities like Duncan mentioned with the payment plans. So
and that then becomes hard when you maybe need that local promoter in the winter time to do a club show or something off season, and you've already done a big show in the market with the festival that's been an international brand coming in.
Yeah, a lot of festival promoters are also club promoters during the other parts of the year because when you're doing like something as big as let's say Tomorrowland, you don't have to really necessarily do multiple events throughout the year. I mean, you are doing it for other reasons, but most of the times, a lot of these festival promoters in, let's say, Latin America also do club shows throughout the rest of the year to help supplement their budget. So yeah, it does make it difficult.
And Jenny mentioned that the budgets have stayed the same in a lot of the festivals because they're pricing tickets for the local audience, but the touring costs for artists are going up. Flights are more expensive, hotels are more expensive. How are you tackling that as an agent? Are you visiting less markets? Are you just seeing more promoters? Like, how do you balance the kind of ecosystem of what shows you do and do not do?
Yeah, it's a case by case basis. I'm an agent. I represent my artists, but I also have to be pro promoter, right? Because if we charge too high fees, one, it could essentially it could actually push the promoter out of the market if the show doesn't do well. But ultimately, the trickle down effect goes to the clubbers, and the ticket prices. And when profit margins are small because now cost of doing business and travel and this, that are higher, it requires promoters even more so to raise the ticket prices. So, when we're negotiating fees for our artists, we try to take that into account. We try to be flexible but fair is what I say. And it works, we have a sizable roster, not all like high A level lists, but we do have a good success rate of putting them onto festivals because promoters know that we're willing to be flexible when necessary to get those opportunities.
And I've heard kind of a bit of a narrative perhaps about how the middle class of artists are struggling potentially on the festival lineup. So they're not the headliner, but nor are they the kind of up and coming hot act that's only charging a few $1,000s. Are you finding that's a difficult spot? Are you encouraging promoters to kind of think outside the box and try and book some of that mid-level talent?
Yeah, I mean, that's been an ongoing problem for a while now with mid-level artists, but it's actually creeping into the older generation of A-list artists that maybe aren't A-list artists anymore, right? I've had a lot of promoters who used to book, say A-list artists from before, really consistently not have space in them on the lineups anymore, even though friendship really ties or, historical trend ties and whatnot. So, unfortunately, the slots on a festival are limited, right? And a lot of promoters now, it doesn't matter if you're mid-class, upper class, or local, like they go to their audiences and poll them. Who do you want to see on the festival? And if I have an artist that I want to bring on, but that artist isn't in that list of artists that the fans want to see, then it's a wasted spot for the promoter if I use this slot for your artist and not someone that my ticket buying public want to see. So yeah, it's a mid-level artist issue, but it's actually becoming just a universal issue in general. Like you have the big A-list artists that they command the highest fees, and promoters are booking them left, right, and center because they know they can sell tickets. And at the end of the day, you need to put butts in seats, so to speak, in order to make sure your profitability is there, but also from a visual perspective, having a half full festival doesn't look good. And even at the bottom level, even if you're paying $500 for an artist, it doesn't matter if it doesn't make sense for the overall viability of the event.
That's a very interesting point, and it kind of speaks a little bit to what Nikki referenced earlier with Sean Ronaldo's kind of festival creep quote. Are you finding that difficult as an agent because you might have an act that gets confirmed in August for August next year, but they have a gigantic hit in between, and suddenly the fee doesn't seem so fair? Or alternatively, you have an artist that is unknown this year, but next spring they go bananas because of a viral moment and the festival's full. Like, how are you tackling festival creep? Are you trying to push it back, or is it something that's inevitable?
Yeah, I mean, here's the problem. I mean, it's definitely an issue that we're facing, and I think it's funny. I was at an Amsterdam music conference this past week, and I had promoters asking, "Oh, well, what are your plans for this artist for 2026?" And I'm like, 2026, right? Like that's like I said, you either have a crystal ball or really big balls, because I don't know if you can ever project like what kind of profile an artist will have over a year from now. The system's moving so fast. An artist that's popular today isn't popular in a week from now. Heaven forbid they have some kind of social media or other kind of like issue happen, and then all of a sudden you put a deposit down for an artist that is worthless for you. So there's a balance that has to happen where yes, you should be planning in advance. And I remember when I started 20 plus years ago, people were booking maybe 3 months ahead. Now over a year ahead is a lot, but I think there's a middle balance, and you have to play the game to an extent, because if I don't sit down with Coachella now for 2026 and I lose opportunities for my artists, then I'm not going to be with that artist much longer. But it's better to have the show and then try to figure out a way to utilize the benefit of it if that artist profile increases between then and the festival. And if you have an artist that's on the festival and then the profile drops, hopefully you have a strong enough contract to keep them on the lineup.
I think it links to that thing that we also referenced earlier. It puts a lot of pressure on the artist, because if you're sitting down with Coachella, you have to then say to the artist, hey, what's your music plan for 2026? And they have to have one, and they might not at this point because the music scene changes. And to Nikki's point about like the press requests, do you find it difficult and are promoters asking you for more and more support in promoting the show from the artists that are booked?
Yeah, well, I mean, you're half right there, because as Duncan talked about, a lot of festivals are going on sale now for the following year, right? So you don't necessarily need to have like a year plan for 2026 if tickets are going on sale in end of 2024. It's funny, like you mentioned this. I was at a EDC Vegas a couple years back, and I went in and I'm walking in the festival, and I saw this huge line. I'm like, what the heck what are they selling up there? And I walked to the front of the line, and they were selling tickets to the following year EDC Vegas. So basically, people went to the festival and got in line to go to buy tickets for the next festival. So I mean, I guess that's the dream for every promoter. But like to move back to your point, like it's more about the current stuff that promoters are asking for, and the support that they request usually ties into like when the tickets are going on sale. So, a lot of our artists, like they have a track that just came out and it popped. All of a sudden the festival wants them for next year. Is that song still going to be big next year? No. But if their tickets are going on sale in 3 months, it works out for them.
And have you found with the kind of genres and the growth of certain genres like hard techno, has that changed the landscape of a lot of traditional festivals?
People, it's the thing is this, right? Like, our business, the music industry, the electronic music business is built on change, right? That's the one constant. Music's always going to progress. There's going to be a new fad. And most of the time, like, look, electronic was like that. It was like that cool style of music. And whatever's cool is officially not cool, right? So the minute hard techno becomes cool, people are already starting to find the next kind of new sound. So festivals are always going to try to chase that sound because they think that's what's going to sell the tickets. But what I try to do as an agent is predict and anticipate what the next trend is going to be beforehand, so that one, I can get artists that are maybe not already signed to a major agency, or promoter can get an artist that's maybe not already in the exponentially high fee ranges that we're seeing now. You ideally will be able to sell tickets for whatever that sound is ahead of time, right?
And has that A&R process changed in the last 5 years, do you think? Like, I feel maybe 5 or 6 years ago, agents looked at clubs to see like, well, who was coming up through the club circuit. As that evolves and changes, are you looking at different metrics to be like, I think there's a business there?
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm a what I consider like a lifer in the business, right? Like, I've been doing this for a very long time, and I don't see myself going to work at a bank anytime soon. And because of that, I've built my business on relationships and whatnot. So when I sign an artist, like, it's kind of like a long-term relationship that I try to establish. Nowadays, a lot more of these things are very fleeting. Like you have this artist who's like all of a sudden hot because of something that happened in, social media or in politics or whatever, and they're going to be popular for a very short amount of time. So you sign them for a shorter period, rather than like, okay, this is going to be a long-term relationship. And I'm trying to get myself personally into that headspace of, okay, this is a business and it's also a relationship-driven industry, but you can also separate the two and have just a artist that you sign for a short period while that sound is hot.
That's fascinating. Well, I think that brings us to about time. There's been some really interesting insight there in the last hour, and thank you for your time today. It's a message of rebirth, I think, and hope and reinvention for next year, which certainly fills me with optimism. So my thanks goes to Jenny, Nikki, Ryan, Duncan, and Freddie. You've been listening to the Association for Electronic Music's Insider Industry Podcast. Thanks to Distorted, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
This is the AFEM Industry Insider,
The podcast from the Association for Electronic Music.